Your effective sentence is therefore 32 years imprisonment.
As Sandile Mantsoe is sentenced for the murder of Karabo Mokoena, another man is charged for the murder of his ex-partner, shot at her university residence in Durban this week. Talks to end the bus strike collapse yet again. And in sport, the battle for the soul of South African football continues over Nkosi and Danny Jordan hurling accusations over the Jennifer Ferguson rape charge. This is eNews at 8. I'm Sally Burdett. Good evening. Some comfort tonight for the family of Karabo Mokoena. The man who murdered her is to serve an effective 32 years in prison. This week, Sandile Mantsoe was convicted of assault, murder and defeating the ends of justice. Mokwena's body was found burnt beyond recognition in a stretch of veld in Lyndhurst last year. Kaelihle Khumalo was in the South Gauteng High Court for the sentencing today.
The court cannot describe you in any other way than a devil in disguise.
A scathing Judge Johnson says it can't be business as usual for Sandile Mantsoe after being found responsible for Karabo Mokwena's murder.
I'm Karabo Mokoena.
The court says the deceased had a right to life and Mantsoe had no right to take it away. He has tried to persuade the court, apologizing for trying to get rid of Mokwena's body after she apparently committed suicide.
For the assault charge, you are sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. For murder, you are sentenced to 30 years imprisonment. For the attempt to defeat or obstruct the course of justice, you are sentenced to 4 years imprisonment.
This was a defining moment for the Mokoena family.
The man thought he will get away with the murder, but this time the devil will always be the liar. He was caught and that's it.
The worst thing is not actually knowing what happened to Karabo, and the only person who knows is Sandile, and unfortunately Sandile won't man up and speak the truth.
The defense says it plans to appeal the sentence.
The sentence is shocking. It is inappropriate based on the fact that the accused was found guilty of murder, and the minimum sentence there is 15 years.
Judge Johnson has made it patently clear that Karabo Mokwena's death was not in vain, and her memory will continue to live among friends and family. The Mokwenas are planning to have a memorial lecture in her honor later this month. Kaelihle Khumalo, Johannesburg.
Justice for Karabo Mokwena's family, but news this week of another potential femicide case. Mangosuthu University of Technology student Sandile Khumalo was murdered in her residence room on Tuesday night. Today, her ex-boyfriend, Thabani Mzolo, appeared in court on murder charges. Our Durban reporter Desin Thathia was there as Mzolo made his first appearance.
Hundreds of students are here to catch a glimpse of the man who allegedly murdered 21-year-old Sandile Khumalo. Her ex-boyfriend stands accused of walking into her university residence and shooting her in the face and arm, before confessing to the crime on Facebook. Inside court, Thabani Mzolo looks unfazed, even flashing smiles to the camera. But it's in stark contrast to the pain on the faces behind him. Mzolo is charged with murder and having an unlicensed gun and ammunition in his possession. He's been remanded in custody while the investigation continues. Some students are worried after Khumalo's murder.
I'm shocked and traumatized. I think it's time for us as women, especially as students, that we shouldn't be silent about being abused and the violence that's thrown towards us.
The Students' Representative Council says it's warned the university about security measures before.
The university has been ignoring that call, only to say, no, they're not in control of the building, the landlords are in charge of the building. Yet a student is registered with the university, not with the landlord.
But the university says it's taking the matter seriously.
Right now, there is a crisis communications team that is working on this and looking at how safe our students can be.
Mzolo is back in court on the 10th of May. Desantathia, Durban.
The sentencing of Sandile Mantsoe for the murder of Karabo Mokoena this week has highlighted the enormous problem of femicide in South Africa. Why are so many women murdered by their partners or ex-partners? What can we as women do to stay safe? Well, I'm joined now by Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, an MP and also the national convener of the Progressive Women's Movement of South Africa. Good evening, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, your response to the effective 32-year sentence today.
Thank you for having me, Sally. I must say the Progressive Women's Movement, they reacted with a feeling of joy and relief that at long last we see the power of the judiciary. Because, you know, we have been having this problem over a long period of time, especially in democracy. And people have been puzzled as to why, with such a constitution and a Bill of Rights, we have such high levels of violence against women, women's rights are violated, and it's business as usual, and there are no consequences. So I must say what Justice Judge Johnson did today, it sends a clear message that this kind of crime will not be tolerated.
I'm sure as former Higher Education Minister, you must be particularly concerned about the piece we've just played about this young woman gunned down in her university residence at the Mangosuthu University of Technology. What do we need to do to make sure young women are safe on campus?
I don't think we have an immediate solution, because these perpetrators do different things in different campuses. While I was still a Minister of Higher Education, we had cases of rape cases at universities like Wits, University of Cape Town, and then also Rhodes University, and many other cases. And we started a system where we're asking for a documentation of these cases and the circumstances under which they occur, and the response, management response, and so on. But when you look at what happened with this young woman, where it said an ex-boyfriend visited on campus, used the network to actually get to her, it really must have, it sends that feeling of vulnerability for many parents, because universities by nature, they have many young people. Some, they come to the library, there are areas that are open, that are not restricted. And again, it's a question of saying, what measures can we do now to ensure that when something like this happens, a message is sent?
What about the political will? Sorry to interrupt you. You're an MP, and the NPA has been lauded for moving quickly. The judiciary has acted quickly here. But what about the political will? Something Sonke Gender Justice raised yesterday. How do we get the political will right?
You know, it's so funny. As I was coming here, I was saying, I'm the member of the NEC, of the ANC. And I was trying to think and say, why don't we have a subcommittee focusing on gender-based violence? I thought about it because of the crisis of having to look at the judgment that we're waiting for, and before that we see a Facebook post where a person says, I've killed you know, I wish I've done something different, as though it's talking about I sprayed doom to kill flies or something.
Yes.
So I think a political will is there, but as we know, depending on the seriousness of the matter, we all, men and women, young and old, urban and rural, we have to keep at it at all times.
Keep highlighting
on
the
a
problem.
daily basis, tackling it and looking at different aspects. It can never be enough. As long as the problem is prevalent, we have to step up the efforts.
Well, I look forward to hearing the moves that you're going to make, and thank you so much for joining us in studio this evening. That was Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, ANC MP and the national convener of the Progressive Women's Movement of South Africa. Thank you very much. Well, the bus strike continues. Talks have broken down once again between unions representing bus drivers and employers. The strike is now in its third week. Sandile Mantsoe has the latest.
Employers are holding firm on their offer of an 8% increase in the first year and 8.5% increase in the second year. Employers say labour's demand is simply unaffordable.
The Labour are still stuck in their demand for a 9% and an 8.5%, backdated to the 1st of April. and unfortunately it has led to a breakdown.
The unions are now planning to intensify their strike.
This is what you call negotiating in bad faith. It's demoralizing, really. And now they're saying there was never an offer of that 9% for 11 months, even on the table. So really, how do you negotiate with people who keep changing their story?
Meanwhile, commuters and the poorest continue to suffer the consequences of the deadlock. The Bargaining Council says it will no longer be facilitating talks.
There's no further processes. I've indicated when I met with the parties finally that they'll have to indicate to me whether they are willing to settle and send me something in writing.
Already in its 16th day, as it stands, the strike continues. Sandile Mantsoe, Johannesburg.
Accusations are flying thick and fast between two of the most powerful men in South African soccer. PSL chairman Irvin Khoza has hit back at SAFA president Danny Jordaan. This after Jordaan opened a defamation case against Khoza and former ANC Member of Parliament Jennifer Ferguson over the weekend. Now, Jordaan believes Khoza is conspiring with Ferguson over the rape charges that she's laid against him. Khoza, speaking to the media today, said Jordaan's claims pure fabrication. Tsepo Tobani was at that briefing.
Irvin Khoza says weekend media claims are a fabrication and that he's never met former ANC MP Jennifer Ferguson. Newspapers reported that SAFA President Danny Jordaan had laid defamation charges against Khoza. That Jordaan alleges that Khoza is at the forefront of the rape case opened by former ANC MP Jennifer Ferguson against the SAFA boss in March. Ferguson is accusing Jordaan of raping her 25 years ago.
I am now in 2018 facing allegations of being a catalyst and founder of a person I've never met, never spoken to, or spoken to anybody associated with her on her case. I know Dr. Jordaan has a wild imagination in relation to me. He sees my goals wherever he faces difficulty. Even for him, this should be a bridge too far.
According to the weekend reports, Khoza allegedly paid for Ferguson's flights and accommodation via a third party.
Ms. Jennifer Ferguson has issued a statement to the fact that I don't know her and she does not know me, and I have nothing to do with her case.
Ferguson, who now lives in Sweden, laid the rape complaint with the South African Police Services in Parkview in March. Tsepo Tobani, Johannesburg.
Still ahead on eNews, a landmark class action ruling. Thousands of gold miners stand to be compensated for contracting lung diseases such as silicosis and tuberculosis while working underground. The Minister of Mineral Resources, Karabo Mokoena, has welcomed the landmark settlement that gold mining companies have reached with miners. The historic agreement will see thousands of gold miners compensated for contracting silicosis or tuberculosis. Now, it's the first class action settlement of its kind in South Africa. It affects miners who worked at several mines from 1965 up until the present day. Compensation will be paid to ill workers or their dependents. The amount concerned has not yet been revealed, but Reuters reports companies have already set aside 5 billion rand. The High Court in Johannesburg still has to approve the agreement.
Class action can only be positive if it translates into regulation being stricter, operation of the mining company being more positive towards people. And I'm dreaming of an industry which appreciates that it's not about minerals, it's not about rocks, it's about human beings. Once we begin to appreciate that, the industry is going to be a better industry.
Transport Minister Bladen Zimande has lashed out at authorities for not doing enough to ensure safety at the Butzkop level crossing in Cape Town. 7 people died when the bakkie they'd been travelling in collided with an oncoming train last Friday. Today, Zimande received a report back from rail authorities. Reporter Leanne Johnson has the details.
A walkabout at the scene of yet another fatal crash at the Batskop level crossing. 7 men lost their lives when their vehicle collided with a train. Transport Minister Blade Nzimande wants action.
The city, which has got plans to actually change the manner in which this intersection operates, or this level crossing, they will also have to play a role. But everybody will have to come together, because no one component will be able to solve this problem without cooperation of everyone.
Preliminary investigations are yet to be completed, but it's believed that a taxi had zigzagged through the lowered booms and that the bakkie had followed only to be hit by the oncoming train.
We know what happened with the train. We know it was traveling at 80 kilometers per hour. We are aware, we know that the booms were operational. We tested them immediately after the accident. And now we need to go look at the footage. And once we've got that information, we should be in a better position to release a much more detailed report.
This is not the first time tragedy has struck here. In 2010, 10 children were killed while being transported to school. Scholar transport driver Jacob Humphreys had also ignored traffic signals, resulting in the crash. Investigations into the latest incident are expected to be finalized by next week. Leanne Jansen, Cape Town.
Let's recap your top stories.
Your effective sentence is therefore 32 years imprisonment.
As Sandile Mantsoe is sentenced for the murder of Karabo Mokoena, another man is charged for the murder of his ex-partner, shot at her university residence in Durban this week. Talks to end the bus strike collapse yet again. And in sport, the battle for the soul of South African football continues, over Danny O'Don hurling accusations over the Jennifer Ferguson rape charge. After the break, we got your weather, and then 6 South African black rhinos have made their way to Chad to be set free in the wild.
Hello everyone. Some parts of South Africa will feel a taste of winter overnight as the recent cold front has caused dry and cold air to push into the interior. That's going to result in temperatures plummeting overnight for some places. And at the same time, there's going to be some overnight drizzle along the eastern escarpment. That will last until about mid-morning. Later on in the day, it will be partly cloudy, but staying quite cool in the region, while over the far western parts, it's going to be a sunny and warmer day for some areas in the Cape provinces. And we can see that on our city forecast for the Northern Cape, upper 20s for some areas, although it is going to be a cold start to the day, especially over the high ground in the southern parts of the province. Into the Western Cape, very warm weather expected for your Friday afternoon. Cape Town and Oudtshoorn 28 degrees, while Mossel Bay along the coastline will be much cooler with a high of 21. Overnight temperatures drop well below 10 degrees Celsius for the mountainous parts of the Eastern Cape. It is likely to be frosty at first for many places, while in KwaZulu-Natal it won't be quite as cold except for Kokstad with a minimum of 3 degrees and some cloud cover expected later on in the day over the northern parts of the province. A few drops of rain possible for the eastern escarpment areas of Mpumalanga, but as we've already seen, that will dry out by mid-morning, and similar conditions for both Tzaneen and Thohoyandou in Limpopo. It's going to be a cooler day for the Lowveld, but warmer weather persisting for Lephalale as well as Thabazimbi. Cold weather expected overnight for much of the northwest, an overnight temperature of only 4 degrees for both Potchefstroom and Vryburg, and it's going to be even colder for the Free State. A frosty start to Friday in Bethlehem with a minimum temperature of 0 degrees Celsius. It's also going to be noticeably colder tomorrow morning for some parts of Gauteng, especially for the central and southern parts, but the afternoon sees things warming up very quickly. Let's take a look at your Saturday's conditions, and it's going to be a dry start to the weekend for all of South Africa. A bit of cloud expected for Polokwane as well as Bombela, and on Sunday the dry weather persists, and it's going to be an especially warm day for some areas in the northern and western Cape.
And finally, South Africa continues to be continental and world leaders when it comes to rhino conservation. Today, 6 black rhinos were flown to Chad's Zakuma National Park to be reintroduced to the wild. Now, the rhinos were sedated and confined in a specially crafted crate to ensure they didn't cause a commotion mid-air. No rhino has been seen in Chad since the early 1970s. The Chad-bound rhinos were in the fortified enclosures or bomas for 3 months in preparation for their long haul. Let's recap your top stories this evening.
Your effective sentence is therefore 32 years imprisonment.
As Sandile Mantsoe sentenced for the murder of Karabo Mokoena, another man is charged for the murder of his ex-partner, shot at her university residence in Durban this week. Talks to end the bus strike collapse yet again. The battle for the soul of South African football continues. Irvin Khoza and Danny Jordan hurling accusations over the Jennifer Ferguson rape charge. And news just in is that 7 miners are trapped underground at Sibanye Stillwater mine on the West Rand this evening. This is after a seismic event earlier on Thursday afternoon. We'll bring you updates as we get them. Do take care and good night.